Hi guys, welcome to the Dad Bub Show. I'm one of your hosts, Ken Blowfield, and Brendo and I, we interview dads all over the world to find out their secrets on balancing how to be a high-performing dad and a high performer in life too. So without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Dad Bub Show. I'm your host, Ken Blowfield, and today Brendo and I are diving into all things money, finance, and family. So strap in and make sure you've put your socks on, because on this episode, those socks are going to be knocked right off. So Andrew Giancola is the master behind the show, the Personal Finance Podcast, attributed to having over 3 million downloads, as well as changing the lives of thousands of people all over the world on the understanding of money, how to leverage finance, and of course, set up your life for abundance and success. So, Andrew talks a lot about money, and this is because he understands that money gives people the freedom to have more choices, right? More options out there in the world. So on this episode with the man on TikTok, Master Money Co, we're going to be unpacking how as a father, as a family man, or just as a family in general, you need to be thinking about money, the things you need to be aware of when trying to generate wealth, and how you should be doing it whilst also being an amazing, fantastic, present, and 100% loving father too. So Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Mate, Andrew, thanks. Mate, I started it off so Aussie straight away. So I've been hooked into your socials. I got to say that it's set up well. So I'm going to do an early call to action, everyone. Just go on to Master Money Co on Instagram and TikTok if you're not too old. But you have some epic content that reels you in, and it's not typically, finance and personal wealth isn't typically the most exciting topic to talk about, and you've done a great job of structuring it. So how did you get started with it, and when did you start posting? Because I'm looking at your content, I'm like, man, you should have millions of followers with how you've laid this out. Like, it's absolutely amazing content that you put out there.
Absolutely. So I actually started with a small blog, and we started with a blog kind of teaching finance. And the reason why I started teaching finance is very early on, I realized that personal finance can create freedom for other people. So my entire goal is to teach as many people as possible how to build wealth. That's my entire goal, and that's our entire mission at Master Money. And the biggest thing that we want to achieve is for everyone to understand, no matter how much money you make, no matter where you're starting, no matter what's happening in your life, that you can actually build wealth. And this is such a powerful narrative, because what this does is it allows you to create freedom within your life. And freedom is the entire goal. It's not to have money to buy fancy stuff. That's part of it. But at the same time, what this allows you to do is create freedom for your life. So we started this to be able to teach as many people as possible, because it's actually very simple. And like you said, we're trying to simplify it as much as possible, but also make it energetic and entertaining and something that people actually be interested in. So for us, that is the biggest goal. And so we started this with the blog in 2015. The blog was just kind of slowly growing over time. And then, in 2020, the pandemic hit, and obviously all of us had a bunch of time. Your boy had a bunch of time on his hands. So what I did was I started the podcast just thinking, here's something I just want to kind of help people out. I have a bunch of friends asking me questions about finance. There's a lot of things that we've done in my background I can talk about later. But this is where we started the podcast, and what we did was we just want to make it energetic and fun for people, and it's grown organically, like you said, for over the last 2 years significantly, and that's one of the things that we're really excited about, because now we get to share this message with more people and share this mission with more people, and so that's kind of how we got started. And the big thing for me was early on when I first graduated from college, I didn't know where my money was going, and so I remember one day I was going to a gas pump to go fill up my gas tank, and I was in my first job. I was making $30,000 a year, which here in the U.S. just isn't much money. And I went to the gas tank, and I didn't have enough money to fill up that gas tank. And I said to myself, this is never going to happen to me again. So I decided to figure out exactly what is going on. So there's a number of things that I did that we can jump into. But that's where it started. And once I figured out how to get my money together and how to manage my money, and this is coming from someone who's an economics and finance major, once I figured out how to actually do this in a practical sense, which is not taught for most people, then I realized this is something that's so incredibly powerful that can absolutely change people's lives.
I love that. Like you specified there, it's like just because you're doing an economics finance major doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be rich, wealthy, and abundant with all these choices in life and make all this money. It's like, fuck it. They teach you all this theory, but then how to practically apply it to make actual, money in the real world, right? And I don't know about your professors over there. I went to business school and I did economics as finance as a minor, and I was looking at my professors like, how come you guys aren't billionaires? Like, what's going on here?
Exactly. And that's the biggest thing. I've learned so much more from outside of college. And when I was in college, I thought I was learning what I needed to learn. And all the stuff I learned was just kind of theories. But once I got out of college and started studying what really actually works in business and in finance, there's a number of different things we can talk about. But once I actually got to the, outside of college, I could implement all of it. And once you start to implement it, it just absolutely changes everything.
Yeah, for sure. So how old are you now?
I just turned 34. So I'm 34 now.
Awesome. And how old were you when you had your first kids?
So
because you have two boys, right?
I do. My firstborn, I was 30, because he just turned 4 last week, and then my second is 1 year old.
And so, where were you at that point when you had your first child? Because going from, and take us through a bit of a journey from when you were at that gas tank to being 30 years old and about to have a baby. Like, tell us in between, because we'll go through a journey about raising kids and setting up for finances after that.
Absolutely. So the whole process from that point on, I was trying to figure out, okay, what do I do with my money from when I'm at that gas pump? I'm looking there. I don't have enough money there. So the first thing I did was I decided to implement a budget and put a budget into place to figure out where my money was going. Because every single month, I had no idea where it was going, and it was frustrating. So I implemented the budget, and what I did was then I could figure out, okay, I understand where my money's going now. I can figure out where I can cut back and how I can invest more money. Then my main focus after that was at my job. I wanted to increase my income. And this is a very powerful thing that most people can do. And most people don't understand the power of increasing their income, because what they do is they increase their income and then they go spend it. But when you increase your income and you can actually go and invest those dollars, it makes a major impact on your life, especially when you're younger in your 20s. Because when you're in your 20s, those dollars are so much more valuable. So over that time frame, when I started to figure out, okay, I need to increase my income at my job. Well, what are the people that are doing above me so that I can increase my income? And during that same time, I was getting married and going through that whole process. I got married when I was 25. We bought our first house. And during that process, I saved my first $100,000 by the time I turned 25. So in about 2.5 years, going from zero to the time I turned 25, I saved my first $100,000. And a number of ways I did that was obviously increasing my income. But in addition, I had side hustles. Like I had a Christmas tree stand. We had a bunch of other businesses that we started on the side. And there was a number of things that I did to try to get to that first goal. And it's really important to get to that goal. And I can tell you why at another point in time here. But that is where we started. So once I got to 25, then I was working as a financial analyst. And what I did was I worked directly for a CEO of a very large company here in the US, directly under him and his team. And so what I was trying to figure out, okay, everybody above me, how did they get to that point? What skills did they have? And I was trying to master those skills. So I would get multiple promotions based on doing that. And going forward, what ended up happening was the CEO and I developed a relationship, and we ended up starting a business together outside of this actual company. And the cool thing about that was then the business was related to real estate. So then what I did was I left that job after I got to a certain point. I think I was 27 years old. We started investing into real estate and buying properties. And then during that time, it was about 2.5 years, I realized I could do this on my own. I don't need a partner for this. And so what we did was we kind of liquidated the properties. The market here in the US went up pretty high. So we were happy with the profits that we made. And that was about the time that I had my first son. So that was the short version of what happened. There's a lot of things in between there, but that's kind of how I developed my finances during that time frame to get ready for my first son. And then a lot of things happened once he was born.
Yeah, I know that, Ken, you're going to have a question. Can I just quickly clarify something you just said? What's a Christmas tree stand?
Okay, so
we do Christmas differently here. It's shrimp on the barbie, you know?
So in the U.S., it's really cold during Christmas time. Not where I live, but in most places. I live in Florida. And so we get do you guys use Christmas trees at all?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we have Christmas trees,
okay.
Yeah.
So we sell, here in the U.S., we cut down our trees. We have live trees. So what I did was I started a stand where we had a big, giant tent. We would actually sell Christmas trees. Yeah, exactly. We sell Christmas trees on the side of the road, and people put live trees inside of their house, and it makes your house smell good and all this other stuff. So you can buy these trees for, I can give you the numbers if you want. You can buy these trees for like $25 wholesale, and then we would sell them for $75, $100, and if they're really big, we'd sell them for up to $300. And so what we would do is I would go to work all day long, and then I would come home. We'd open the stand from 5 to 9 p.m. when people get off work, and we would sell those Christmas trees. So that was the first side business that I had, and my wife and I ran that. I don't even think we were married yet. I think we were just engaged when we were running that. And then that's what it was. Yeah.
So
exactly.
I'm curious about that. Now I know that this wasn't really where my question was going, and I'm going to circle back to something
Sure.
to clarify something a little bit later. But okay, so you've got these Christmas trees stand. You're buying them, wholesale. You're buying them in bulk, $25 a pop. Well, I mean, it's not. You can't just store them chilling in your garage, or you've got to store them somewhere. And then you're saying you've got a stand. Like, where is the stand? Where are the trees being stored? How are the trees surviving? Like, I know when I cut down a tree, within a day, it looks dead.
Right. So Christmas trees last a little bit longer when you cut them. So the big thing with what we did was we had a giant tent. You can almost think of like a circus tent, but just a smaller version of that. And with underneath that giant tent, we would store all the trees. So in the back half of the tent, we would have it fenced off, and we would have trees all stored back there. And in the front, we would display the trees underneath that tent, and we would do it by busy roads. That's the key with the Christmas tree stand. You want it to be by busy roads. And the reason why I did this was I met somebody who all they did was they just had 2 Christmas tree stands, and they made $100,000 a year just by having these 2 Christmas tree stands. I was thinking in my head, okay, well, I can work 1 month a year and make $100,000 a year, so let me try it out. We didn't do as well as they did. They were in better locations. But what we did was we put it by busy highways. You store it out there, and then I had a specific person. I had a person who would actually at nighttime, who lived close by, would just kind of drive by, make sure nobody was messing with the stand. But we had it all fenced off and everything like that as well. But that's the impetus. That's kind of where we stored it. So you want it by a busy highway so people can kind of walk by. And we rented the land from a specific individual to keep the stand there.
It's a good learning lesson in retail.
100%. I think just so if anyone is just randomly tuning in to a random segment or point in this conversation, we're talking about Christmas tree stands, and Andrew is not just making sure he's not watching his corner on the side of the street for with drug dealers or anything like that. He's selling Christmas trees.
Exactly.
But he's dealing in trees, right? So I wanted to circle back to something you said earlier, Andrew, in relation to money and the power of the dollars are more valuable in your 20s as opposed to any other point in time. Now, for anyone who isn't familiar with like the compounding effect, because obviously those dollars aren't more valuable if you just keep them in your bank account, right? And they do nothing, and inflation increases, the dollar actually decreases, right? Or the value of that money decreases in your bank account. So for anyone who's just tuning in and doesn't understand why they're more valuable in your 20s, can you just clarify that just slightly?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing you want to do with your dollars, every extra dollar that you have outside of what you're doing to pay your bills or to save up for your emergency fund, which an emergency fund is just an extra set of cash that you set aside in case that something happens to you in your life. Every extra dollar that you have, you want to invest those dollars into an asset. Now, what an asset is, it's something that goes up in value over time. And you want to make sure that when you invest those dollars, the earlier that you can do it, the better. Because what happens is there's something called compound interest. And compound interest means that your money is compounding over time. So say, for example, you get a 10% rate of return and you invest $100. Well, if you invest $100 after the first year, it's going to be $110. But the thing about compound interest, it's not just compounding on the initial $100. Now that you've made that $110, the next year, it's going to compound on $110. So you make $111. And the more dollars that you put into that account, the faster it can grow and the faster it can snowball. And the reason why this is so valuable early on is because every single dollar that you invest early on has so much more time to grow. And compound interest, the more time that it has, the faster it will accelerate. You can look at somebody like Warren Buffett, for example. I don't know if you guys know who Warren Buffett is. So in my opinion, he's the greatest investor of all time. And he actually made the majority of his wealth after he turned age 55. If you look at it, it's like over 90% of his wealth was after the age of 55 because he just had so much time to allow his money to compound. I think he's over 100 billion now. But he had so much time to allow his money to compound, and that's how valuable it is. And we've done some calculations now where we figured, say, for example, you just get an average rate of return of 7%. Every dollar you invest in your 20s is worth somewhere between $80 and $88. So if you invest those dollars and get that 7% rate of return, this is so incredibly powerful. You can think of every buying decision that you make. If you buy $1 coffee somewhere, what's going to happen is that coffee is actually worth $88. So is that trade-off worth it to you when you're in your 20s? And it's so incredibly valuable to invest your dollars in your 20s because you have that time horizon.
Yeah, it's so important, so true. And I'm a big fan of compounding interest calculators. I think that it gives you that horizon. I'm always jumping on them just to see what things are. So if people haven't looked into that and you're looking at, okay, how much you're investing and the numbers or the percentage, because I know that you speak about 15%, 20%, the Barefoot Investor, who's an Australian a finance specialist who's helped out a lot of people with general home finance, he does that similar sort of split too. Once you get to your emergency fund at a certain amount, then it's 20% gets invested in. With your content, and something I will point out with your content, which I got hooked on, and how you've laid it out really well, is that you give breakdowns on if you invest, and I think it's 10 stages, 100, 200, 300, and when people see this build up, and the actual back end, so the interest that you receive, and if you end up investing something like $250,000, but you actually end up with over $1 million because that compounding interest is like over $800,000, and you look at that and you're like, oh man, this is incredible.
Exactly, and that's the most amazing thing about it, because over time, what happens is at your first $100,000, what happens is it's powered by your savings rate. So it feels like you're going nowhere. And so in your 20s, a lot of people get discouraged because they feel like they're going nowhere. And in your 30s, it feels like that as well. But over time, what happens is that split flips. So for example, if you invest $500 a month, what's going to happen is 76% of that is actually going to be at your savings rate to get to your first $100,000. And the rest of it is going to be actually powered by compound interest. But once you get to your first million, which is going to happen over the course of 30 years if you invest that $500 a month and you get a 10% rate of return, once you get to that first million, it's actually completely flipped, where 76% of it is actually from compound interest, your money growing, and the rest of it is actually from your savings rate. So at the beginning, it's very difficult and it feels like a slog and a grind, but you just have to stay the course, because once you stay the course and you see how compound interest actually works, it starts to accelerate that much faster. And the amazing thing is, once you get to your first million, it takes you only 1 year at a 10% rate of return to get to that next $100,000. That's how fast it starts to compound over time.
So, Andrew, look, I want to kind of circle into being a family man shortly, and obviously how you've structured your finance and how you recommend it for family and new parents moving forward shortly. But before I do that, right? So, we're talking about the power of decisions and choices that you have in your 20s, and these are big decisions you need to make because, cool, you've just saved up your first 20 grand. It's like, should I go to Europe or should I go to Australia if you're in the US, or should I go to the US if I'm in Australia and blow my 20 G's on an amazing, beautiful holiday because we are stuck in a world of Instagram and TikTok and seeing all these amazing experiences? Should I do that, or should I put this, because that is an investment too in a lot of ways of your experiences of the world, or should I invest this into, revenue generating assets? And so in relation to that, it's like, how do you determine as a 20-year-old, should they go on holidays at all? Should they break and split their finances in relation to that? Or how do you kind of break that down?
So for vacation specifically, or holidays, as you guys call it, the biggest thing that I can tell you, and I have a video coming out, it's actually coming out on TikTok. We have a YouTube video coming out on this as well. And it's one of the coolest hacks out there when it comes to personal finance. So the biggest thing is you can actually do both. And your money is supposed to be there to bring you value, and I think experiences are one of the biggest values that you can have. If it's something that makes you happy, you want to be spending your dollars at that point. And at the same time, there's also hacks to get all the way around this. So one thing that we love to teach is how to build up credit card reward points. And if you guys have never heard that, what it is you put every single bill that you have on a specific credit card. Now, you're going to hear a lot of financial gurus out there say don't use credit cards, but credit cards can be used for a lot of different things if you know how to use them. And you can put your bills on those credit cards, pay them off every single month, no matter what. You're going to pay those credit cards off every single month, and you're going to acquire these points. And what points do is you can actually reimburse these points for free travel. And the cool thing about this is my wife and I just got back from Mexico 2 weeks ago, and we did not spend a dime. We stayed at a really expensive hotel. We flew for free. All of these things were completely free because we put all our bills on credit cards and utilized those credit card points to be able to reimburse for free travel. Now, if you are starting off, and I know in Australia you guys don't have credit scores, we have something called a credit score, which means that we have to, have a specific score to even be able to open a credit card. So if you don't have that, then I think it's still worthwhile to have those experiences, and you can do both. So say if you have $20,000, maybe you spend $2,000 of it on those experiences, those things that you will regret not doing. And in addition, you can use the rest of that money to be able to invest those dollars so that it can work for you for the rest of your life. I don't think that you should forego experiences, especially if you really value those things, because I think money is there to bring you value, and you should utilize those dollars on things that really value and the things that you want to use it for. And at the same time, you can also invest your dollars. So I don't want you to, keep your dollars and hoard all your cash, because you're never going to be happy that way. The way you want to utilize your money is on things that make you happy and on things that bring you value, and at the same time, taking care of your future self as well.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. It's a really, really good approach. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit and go into the dad side of stuff and your experience with being a dad, because I know that we're going to come back and then we're going to talk about structuring your finances for your kids, which is something that you've got great insights on. So you've gone from having no cash at the gas to having sweet side hustles, partnering with your CEO, becoming a real estate mogul, and then about to have your first kid. So first of all, how did you find out you're about to have your first baby?
So my wife had been begging me for a baby for a couple of years at that point. So we finally decided to have one. And side note, she wants 3 and I want 2, so we're gonna have 3. But we're so that's kind of the point where we'll have one more probably is our plan. But within that first one, we kind of made the decision that we wanted to have the first one, and then found out my wife came and surprised me, and I think she gave me like a little onesie that kind of showed that she was pregnant, and then we kind of waited a couple weeks, told all of our family and stuff like that. So that's how I found out, and I was ready. We were kind of preparing for the next couple of years. I think we did it the right way, which I was excited about.
Amazing. And yeah. So when you were kind of in that moment, you found out you had a baby. Obviously, you've been kind of ish planning it, or at least your wife was at the time. And you're planning this, and now the moment happens. I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be a new dad. What goes through your mind in relation to what do I now need to do? Who do I now need to become to be the dad that's a provider that's doing all these amazing things for my soon-to-be child?
Well, you nailed that, because the biggest thing that I wanted to figure out was how did I want to build my life so that I could spend as much time as possible with this thing that I have unconditional love for, that I couldn't even imagine having that type of love for beforehand. How could I spend as much time as possible and create a life for them that is absolutely amazing, and a life for my family that's absolutely amazing? So what I wanted to do was figure out all of those things. And I think we're finding a balance now. And the biggest balance of that is financial independence. And financial independence is kind of the biggest thing that I talk about, is figuring out how to get your dollars working for you so that you don't have to work anymore and you can spend your time doing what you want to do. And becoming a provider was one of the biggest things. And I know a lot of people have a lot of light bulb moments. I know a lot of people who do the biggest things in their life the year that their first kid is born. And that was no different for me. It was something where we were starting all different types of things, including, side businesses and things like that were actually kind of scaling. So it was one of those things where that was kind of the impetus of a lot of things that we're doing now. And I thought I have less time, but at the same time, I'm utilizing that time so well to grow so many different things at the same time that it's very cool to see how it happens and how that actually motivates you to do that.
Yeah, it's so true. Like the light bulb thing for sure, and then the time management thing. So I would say that I went through a similar process. So I built and sold a dating app, and I sold it just before we had our first baby, just because I wanted to free up. I don't want to be caught into this high growth tech startup situation and then miss the first 4 years of potentially my only child. And so I exited at the next raise at that point in time, and then sort of went through a stage from there. But one thing in my next ventures and what I do now is I found, okay, I have to be so efficient with my time, because if I'm not using whatever block that is that I have to get, whether it's fitness or business related, that's going to, I'm not going to be there mentally, probably more so than anything, because I'm going to be thinking about all the stuff that I still needed to get done. So how do you structure your life now from a day-to-day? Walk us through how you structure your life with these different projects that you have going on, with building this channel and then still maintaining the balance is a term that I use loosely, but still maintaining that balance to be able to get, be a success at everything in life.
So the biggest thing I do is when I wake up, the first thing I do is I spend some time with my kids, because my kids, my oldest actually wakes up first. He wakes up pretty early, 5:36, somewhere around that range. So I wake up, I spend some time with my kids, about an hour. Then the next thing I do is I time block everything, just like you're saying. I do the same exact thing. So everything is scheduled throughout my day, and I do that the night before. The tool that I use, if you want to go that deep, is I use Asana, and then I use my Google Calendar as well. So those two things are the major things that I utilize. And then the first thing I do is I always work out. So I built a home gym, and I spent the money, invested the money in a home gym, so I didn't have to drive to the gym and then come back. It was worth every single penny. I use that thing every single day. So that's the very first thing that I do. Then from there, what I do is we kind of get the kids ready. They go to school or daycare or whatever, and then we go to the next point. So then I start working, and usually I start working from 8 o'clock in the morning at the office all the way up to about 4 o'clock. And then from there, drive home. And then the time that I come home after that, the normal part of the day, is the time that I want to spend total focus time with my family. So what we do, we always have dinner together. We spend time all the way up until they go to bed. So they usually go to bed around 7:38. And then during that time frame, once they go to bed, I utilize that time after the next couple of hours to get the rest of my projects done, because I'm working on so many things at the same time right now. The biggest thing is making sure that I utilize that time as wisely as possible. So it's all time blocked. I batch all the stuff that I do. So for example, if I'm making TikToks, for example, I batch all the TikToks for the week into one session so that it's all efficient and I can utilize it in that way. And then on the weekends, what I do is I try not to work as much as I possibly can on the weekends, but a lot of times I have to. So I wait till nap time. They still nap right now. Wait till nap time, work a couple of hours during that time, and just try to get it in on the weekends as well. But utilizing that time as efficiently as possible is one of the biggest things to be able to accomplish it. And that's kind of what my generic day would look like and how I would structure it out.
For sure. Does your wife work?
She does. So my wife is an executive of a big company here as well. So she is extremely busy as well. So that family time that we have, in the morning and at nighttime is incredibly important to us, because that's why both kids do go to one. We have a nanny come for the youngest until he turns 2. And then the oldest goes to daycare, but it's like a VPK here, which is like preschool essentially. So they have a curriculum and everything like that.
Yeah, we had another gentleman who was on our podcast a while back, Ryan Tuckwood, a good friend of mine, and I know both him and his partner are both super determined, super focused on their careers, right, their businesses. And so with the daycare situation, what they did is they found a entrepreneurial daycare in Queensland to send their kids. I was like, what do they teach there? Like, that would just be cool.
That's amazing.
Imagine the little stalls. They have like fake cash. I don't know what they do, but I reckon it'd just be fun as. And
imagine if it was just like Grant Cardone videos and like Gary V's like popping up and all this sort of stuff. Can you imagine?
I don't know. I reckon the kids would come home wired, right? Like just too much energy.
They just have like one AirPod in and they're just chucking out sick Gary V quotes. That'd be great.
Exactly. That's kind of like my 4-year-old already knows what an asset is and stuff like that. People are like, what are you teaching? I'm like, I'm talking, like I tell him about my day, and he just kind of picks up stuff as we go along there.
I know.
That's so good.
It'll be the future of children. Probably when we were all kids, right? Our parents used to come to us, oh, honey, what do you want to be when you're old? It's like, astronaut, fireman, like all those typical manly, cool jobs.
Right.
But I reckon the whole industry has shifted. It's like, I know my nephews, they're like, I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be a TikToker. I was like, man, that's just so wild, because that was just never on the cards for me. And you can just create great content and people can be remunerated for that great content. And then you have audiences that you can leverage for other business ventures in the future. And it's just amazing, like the world, how it's kind of evolving these days.
I just wanted to be a bus driver. I spoke about this the other day, talking about like your son picking up assets. I never actually realized, but when we were in like kindergarten or year 1, we had to draw what we wanted to be, and I'd draw a bus, and I only clicked, all I knew was what my dad did. Like that was my only lens of the world, and so I wanted to be a bus driver. That was it.
And that's the incredible thing, is that there's so much that they can learn now. And obviously with technology, when I grew up, we had like dial up and it took forever to even get on the internet. We used, AIM chat and stuff like that. But now there's so much that they have available to them. They can kind of learn on their own, that it's absolutely amazing that the stuff they could do. They can start businesses online as early as they want to. It's incredible.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
we had another one of the guests, Brian Swan. So they're the Unstoppable family. They've pretty much been, nomads actually they've been in Bali for quite a few years, but they have one daughter, and she had a 6-figure business by the time she was 11.
Yeah, she had a 6-figure business by the time she was 11, but it was valued at 7 figures. So it might have been actually 8 figures. Oh, 7 figures or 8 figures.
It was
So-
something ridiculous. It was an
so-
apparel company, and someone came in and they offered her like it was something ridiculous, like $30 million to invest in this business. And she was like 11 at the time. It was a wild story.
They swim in pretty big circles. So it was one of the people from the US Shark Tank. So I won't mention any names. They wanted to invest, but they wanted to take over controlling ownership of where she manufactured her product. And one of the reasons she started this line is she wanted to create ethical, humane approaches to creating women's fashion, which was a beautiful kind of value that she held in her product line. But then they wanted to ship that manufacturing to China and in sweatshops. They didn't obviously specify sweatshops, but this is the kind of direct line of conversation.
Vibe, yeah.
Right.
To reduce the cost to make more profits. And she was like, nah, no way. And the mum, so the parents asked Hanalei, because the investors went straight to the parents. And the investor was like, oh, we want to do this, we want to do that. And they're like, well, why don't you ask the founder, which is my 11-year-old daughter? She's right here. Ask her if she wants to do that. And so they immediately at that specific point of time gave their daughter this responsibility of like, it's your decision. Where do you want to take this, honey? And the power of like what Brendo and I think, took from that, it's like, you don't need to wait until your children are adults to give them the ability to do things. It's like you can take leverage with your children and give them responsibility and ownership at an early age. One of the things that Brian and Rhonda used to always say to their child, it's like most parents say, what do you want to do when you're older? But they said, what do you want to do now? And since that, she's over 3 different businesses in her life, and she's 14 now. So it's crazy.
I absolutely love that. I'm going to use that in my own parenting as well, because I love treating them as if they're a little bit older than they actually are, just to see, it's like Grant Cardone. You mentioned Grant Cardone. He has that 10X rule, meaning, set your goals 10X where you think it should be. And you could do the same thing with your kids if they're interested in it, obviously, but do the same thing with them where you kind of see where they land. And I think there's a lot of things that could happen by doing that.
Yeah, it's so true. So I just want to circle back to your wife and her working, because I find this so interesting. There's so many different dads that we interview, and I just love finding the dynamics, and we learn so much from it. So it's very, very selfish, but at the same time, it's just great to see how other people do it. So she's an executive at a big company, very, very driven. So what was her process like from going through pregnancy, having your first child, to then going back into work? So emotionally, physically, how was that process, and how did you handle it?
So she is extremely driven. I mean, she is very driven. We were actually going to consider, seeing if she wanted to stay home with the kids, and she just kept getting promoted over and over again. And she is at a company that is a wide population of the employees at the company are women. And so that helps her out a lot in terms of going through the pregnancy process, and in addition, being able to take time off when the baby was born. So it made that process much easier, where a lot of people at a lot of companies, have 4 or 6 weeks, where she had a longer time horizon. I'm not sure how much you have in Australia, but in the US, it's a very small time in comparison to most people. So she had 12 weeks, but in addition, she gets a lot more days the first year that she had the baby as well. So it made it much easier on her, but it's very stressful in terms of, especially when you have a newborn and she's trying to work and all her meetings are, really high demand and a lot of things that are happening there. It is very stressful. So there's a lot of communication that has to happen. But at the same time, it's something that has been very worth it, because she is not the type of person, the way that her mindset is, she's just not the type of person that would be able to not work. And for a long period of time, we've considered, having her run one of our businesses or something like that as well. But she just loves her job so much, and it's what she's always wanted to do. So for her, it's one of those things that she's going to continue to do it for a little while longer.
Yeah. What about the challenges that you faced in being a new-time dad? Was there any shocks for you, or are you just like, I'm so analytical, I got this down pat, and my babies, they love assets, they love finance, and they're the most structured babies in the world?
There was a ton of, one of the biggest shocks, and I was trying to prepare for this, but one of the biggest shocks was A, the loss of time, but B, the fact that it's not about you anymore. And I think at the beginning, when you're doing something where you're trying to grow businesses and stuff like that, you have to spend a lot of your time and treat those businesses like they're your babies. And once you have your first child, it's not about you anymore. It's not about the business anymore. It's about that child and creating, an amazing environment for them. So that was one of the biggest challenges for me at the very beginning, is understanding that. Truly the biggest challenge of all, and this is really cliche, but it was not sleeping at the beginning, where you're trying to be a high performer and not sleeping. My wife and I both would get up, in the middle of the night and stuff until we got the sleep training down and all that kind of stuff. But that was another difficulty, the hurdle to get over. I just didn't realize how difficult it would be to try to be really efficient, and at the same time sleep deprived. So those were some big things in the first year. And by the second child, I was ready for it, and I kind of knew what to do, and I was used to it by then. But I like to sleep in terms of having that high performance. It's a big deal for me, especially for working out and working.
I feel you. Do you wear a Whoop or anything?
I wear a Apple Watch. I have it off right now, so people aren't calling me, but I wear an Apple Watch.
Okay, so I took my Whoop off for like the first 3 months because I'm like, I don't even want to see what it is. I don't want to know what my recovery is. I'm just getting through this thing.
Exactly. It's really a difficult thing, but it gets easier over time. And obviously, if you're a new dad listening to this, it's one of those things that you will get used to, and you'll be able to adjust over time.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
every single person on this planet has been raised by either a mum, a dad, or someone similar, and they've all been through it with us. So if they can do it, we most certainly can push through, drive through, and make this grind work. And at least most of us have a roof over our head, whilst we're raising our children. And way back when, they were living in caves and trying to find locations to live. So we're very, very lucky that we have roofs over our head. So my son's just woken up. I can hear him kind of crying outside. I'm sure my wife's going to sort that out. So Andrew. Moving into this, right? So, having a family is obviously a big responsibility, but then, you're talking about investing and the power of investing and how important that is. Now, I know as a new parent, I'm like, cool, well, geez, every spare cent I want to just spend on my child. I want to buy them all the new stuff. I want to, you're in this sense of awe, this new experience of I've never had a child before, and now it's not my money. It's like, I just want to spend it all on you. So what's the mindset that you have to be aware of? Like, how can you still factor saving and investing, does your emergency fund now increase now because you have a new one? How do you segment your financial accounting as a family?
So the biggest thing, and you nailed it, is having a larger emergency fund once that child comes. And there's a lot of things that go into play. If you're going to have something, for example, if you're going to have childcare, that is my biggest expense every single month and still is, and nobody talks about this. So it's one of those things where you have to have some extra cash on hand to be able to utilize those dollars, if an emergency happens. So what an emergency fund is you save 3 to 6 months expenses not in case something happens in your life, but when something happens in your life. So what's going to happen is, our car is going to break down, or something's going to happen where somebody gets sick, or you're going to have cash on hand to be able to take care of that, because you don't want additional stresses in your life and anxiety surrounding money. So if you prepare for that ahead of time, because something's going to happen in life, we don't know what it is, but if you prepare for that, you can make sure that your financial situation is secure. And that's the most important thing, is protecting that. So doing that up front is one of the biggest things that you want to do. In addition, there's some things that I can get into, like an investing system that we utilize for my kids. But in addition, you want to start considering, if you're going to save for college and all those other things as well. But having that emergency fund in place first is the biggest thing that you want to do.
Cool. Amazing. And so once you've got that emergency fund, that's 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Now, as a new dad, you're going to have to guesstimate a couple of things on how much your child is going to cost, but you can find some averages out there on the internet, and then just
babies use a lot of nappies. That's all I'm going to say for any new dads. That's what shocked me. There's a lot of nappies.
Yeah, and you can save money, I think, with those the reusable nappies. But I didn't try it because it looks gross. But I hear it's a fantastic thing, both for the environment and for the toxin stuff. But hey, it's not for me.
Did you do that, Andrew? I got to ask. Did you use how savvy are you?
I tried. My wife would never go for it though. So but I did try to do that, and then but she turned me down right away.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of our wives. Yep. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Awesome. Sweet. So we disposable nappies. That's a big cost, and then obviously daycare comes in as a top second, I reckon, after that. So okay. So once that's been sorted, you've got your emergency fund all structured and sorted. Now it's about obviously structuring a certain percentage of your income or your money to investing. So do you look at someone's financial structure or revenue or income, let's say if they're an employee, or revenue as if they're a business, and you go, cool, so a certain percentage is going to be put to investing. You have to now deal with your living expenses to be within this percentage structure of your income. Is that how you look at it, or how do you kind of structure it?
The biggest thing you want to do is figure out how much extra cash you have on hand. So if you want to track your money, now there's a couple of budgets that we always talk about. You can track it line by line item like a traditional budget. I use a tool called YNAB. There's a lot of other automated tools out there as well to budget. In addition, there's another way to budget to track your expenses. And the reason why we created this was because a lot of people just don't want to budget. They hate the word budget. It sounds like torture to them, so they just don't want to do it. So we call this the reverse budget, where you take your savings off the top and then you spend what is left over. Now, a lot of people if I say that on TikTok, a lot of people will come back to me and say, oh, I'll just be completely broke. I'll spend all my money on my savings and not have anything left for my bills. But what this really is making sure that you pay yourself first. Whatever you have left over, you're going to figure out how much you spend every single month. Pay yourself first so those dollars are going to get invested, and then spend whatever you have left over. But it's going to be within whatever you can afford. So at the beginning, if you're just starting out, you want to be saving anywhere between 10 to 20%, and you want your goal to be 20% of your income. The reason why is if you only save 10% of your income, you're going to be working for 50, 51 years. And if you hate your job, if you're in a cubicle or you're working in an office that you just absolutely hate, you don't want to be doing that. So increasing the amount that you're saving over time is incredibly important. The way we teach how to do this is to increase your savings rate by 1% every month or every quarter, because that 1%, you're not truly going to feel it over time. And every time you get raises and you get bonuses and things like that, then you can start to accelerate even faster, because the faster you do this and the higher your savings rate is, the faster you can retire. And I know people who retired in their late 20s, early 30s, and 40s because of financial independence, because of their savings rate. They increased their savings rate. So that is one of the biggest things that you want to do up front, is figure out what that percentage is. Now, everything else is going to fall into line. You want your housing 30% or less. If you spend more than 30% on your housing, you're going to end up being house poor, unless you don't have something like transportation. If you live in a big city and take a subway or something like that, then you can kind of offset it. And all of these numbers are adjustable outside of your savings rate. You want to make sure that your savings rate is either the same or growing over time. And then all these other things that fall into line are adjustable. And you can utilize those to kind of figure out a rule of thumb. But then one other extra thing and we kind of talked about this with the traveling and going on holiday, is that you want to make sure that you have some cash set aside for things that you want to do every single month and things that bring you value, because otherwise this is going to feel like a terrible grind, and we don't want that. We want to make sure that this is something that is comfortable. We're still using our money for things like that are fun, and then going from there. And then if you feel like you're just not saving enough money, the biggest thing you want to focus on is increasing your income. And your income will solve a lot of problems in your finances, especially if you're keeping that increased income. Say, for example, you make $30,000 a year, then you go to $60,000 a year. Well, if you save half of that, 15,000 of it, and you're putting those towards investments, that's worthwhile, and using the other 15,000 to increase your lifestyle, make your life happier, that type of thing. So that's kind of how we set it up. And the biggest thing that we set up is making sure that you save off the top and then grow that savings rate over time. And you can do it slowly where it's painless, but you just want to be growing that over time.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Sorry, Brandon, I know you're going to jump in there just for a second, so I just want to just touch on something really important that Andrew touched on there, right? So if you don't have any more cash left over, then obviously you need to focus on increasing your income somehow, right? Or your revenue generating revenue generating activities from a sales guy or a business dude. It's like, I want to perform revenue generating activities so I can generate more money for my business. Now, if you're a dude and you're working for an income and you can't generate more money, your business isn't giving, so the business that you work for isn't giving you raises. They're not giving you incentives. They're not like you're saying, if you bring some clients in, we'll give you a commission. If they're not saying that type of stuff, if you can't negotiate a raise or in any respect, right? It's not about leaving your job. It's like, what can you think outside to generate some more money? I know plenty of guys that have used Facebook Marketplace as a way, as a side hustle, to make hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of extra money per week, where they find free stuff. They spend an hour or so doing it up, sanding it back, making it nice and beautiful, and then flipping it. Or buying something cheap on Marketplace and selling it for more on Marketplace. And now that's just one example, but there are a magnitude. Selling Christmas trees on the side of the road as another way, as a side hustle to make money. So if you're stuck in the mindset of like, I don't have any extra cash left over to invest, it's not like I'm fucking screwed, I can't do anything, I need to go find a new job. You may not need to find a new job, because when you find a new job, there's typically a learning curve of having to put in more hours to become good at that job, right? There's like, if you're already good at a job, maybe stay there and then work on generating wealth on a side hustle. And that's what Andrew did. I know that's what Brendo's done. That's what I've done in a series of different things myself. And it's a great way to bolster the amount of money that you can make so that you can have more options and then invest in these things that Andrew's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. One thing that I wanted to point out, so one of your videos with the different ratios and the structures, you talk about car finance. I'm not going to delve into it too much, but it was the 28-3% rule. So I pulled out my little calculator. So I got a Tesla, and I coincidentally followed that rule almost to a T. But the value of the car actually went up because Teslas are really hard to get in Australia right now. And then they've just launched this app, like this program, and it's kind of like Airbnb, but for Teslas. It's called Evie. And so people can hire out your Tesla. And so my office is like 4 minutes from my house. And I was like, I love driving it, except I don't really need it. And I literally work out of a gym. So like my office is in a gym. So I'm going to go train anyway. I may as well just warm up before I go. So I actually make money off my car, which is awesome.
That's absolutely amazing, and that's something we have here too. It's called Turo. It's a different thing, but that's a way. And I could talk about the 28-3 rule if you want as well. But that's a way to actually turn a liability into an asset, and that's one of the coolest things. My brother-in-law does the same thing. He has a couple of trucks that he has his old truck and he bought a new one, and he does the same thing on Turo where he rents about. And he makes at least $500-$600 a week just from doing that.
Yeah, legit. It became profitable. So that's super, super cool. I won't delve into that specifically. People can go find it, but just look for the 28-3 car rule, and 15%. Go treat yourself as well. Final thing that we want to touch on is setting your kids up, because I know that we're coming towards the end, and this is the big banger that I want to get. So investing for your kids and structuring this. Super important. I know that in the States, you're probably going to have some different rules to what we have over here, but I'm going to roll out the red carpet. Investing for your kids. Let's get the 101.
Absolutely. So this is one of the biggest things that you can do for your kids. And because they have such a long time horizon, we talked about compound interest early on in this episode, and because they have so much time, they have a very long time for this compound interest to start working. Now, the big thing I want to caveat up front is you want to take care of your own retirement before you start investing for your kids. So if you're not saving for your own retirement, don't start saving for your kids until you take care of, because there's no loans for retirement. We call it the oxygen mask method. When a plane is going down, you want to make sure that you take care of your own oxygen mask and then help somebody else. The same thing goes for your finances. You want to take care of your own retirement, then start investing for your kids. But as you start to grow that income and as you start to have that extra income, there are some amazing things that you can do for your kids. So I will do this. The way that you can actually do it is in a generic way that will work in every country, is you can utilize what is called a brokerage account. So I'm not sure if in Australia they call it the same thing, but a brokerage account is a place where you put your dollars to start investing those dollars. And the biggest thing you want to do, especially if you're about to be a new parent or you are a new parent, is we have a system to get you from A to Z where you're gonna make your child very wealthy over that time. So the first thing you want to do is when your child is born, you can almost count this as an expense to having a child, just like a hospital expense or something along those lines, is you want to put $1,000 into a brokerage account. Now, if you could put more money into this brokerage account, these dollars are so incredibly valuable that over that time, you're going to see how amazing this could be if you could put more. So if you could put more, I would definitely do it. Then what you want to do is every single month, you want to add $100. Now, a lot of people will push back and say, well, I don't have $100. You know, if you don't have $100, put whatever you have into there. I don't care if it's $10, because they have so much time to compound that it's going to make a massive difference over this time frame. But put what you can. But I'm going to show you the example of what would happen with $100. And if you put $100 every single month in there, you're going to see compound interest start to work slowly, because like we said, the first 100K is the hardest to get. Over that time, one thing we like to do is add a bonus every birthday and every Christmas. Now, you could just do this monthly of, $40, $45. But in addition, what we do is every single birthday, my son's birthday was last week, we just did it, we add $250 into that account as a bonus. And then at Christmas time, we do the same thing, $250, or whatever holiday you celebrate at the end of the year. You can add additional $250. You can add $500 extra. You can just add that $40 extra a month, whatever. The math works all different ways. And the cool thing is, with this, if you get a 10% rate of return, which here in the U.S., we have something called the S&P 500, which is the 500 largest companies in the U.S. So this is companies like Apple, Amazon, Tesla. You could think of all the great companies in the U.S. They are all within this fund, and they are weighted that way. So that has, on average, got a 10.5% rate of return. So you can find something anywhere between that 7 and 10.5% rate of return and get a very close to similar result. But we ran these calculations based on the S&P 500 because since 1957, it's got that 10% rate of return. And by the time they turn age 18, if you invested that $100 every single month and then the $250 in their birthday and $250 at Christmas, they would have $86,189. And the amazing thing about this is this is really cool, because by the time they turn age 18, they have that. But then here's where the power comes into play. You don't have to add another dollar to this account. And if you do not add another dollar, by the time they turn age 65, because they have so much time for compound interest to work, they're going to have $7.6 million And this is where the amazing power of compound interest in time comes into play, where you can see this actually working. From not adding another dollar at $86,000, by the time they turn to age 65, they'll have over $7 million.
Isn't that wild? Just that, like you said, just that effective compounding interest. So I've structured mine very, very similar. I think Ken's done something similar, but a slightly different approach with Nate as well, yeah?
I'm playing a little bit in the crypto space. I got some things in, like, we have something called the ASX over here. So I think the ASX 100 or whatever it is. And so I have Nate's crypto fund. I have my crypto fund, or my family crypto fund. Then I've obviously got our more, let's call it, safer form of investing in the ASX as well. I was looking at the S&P and different things overseas, but the brokerage fees are too high to warrant it for the little amount of money that I'm playing with. So, we get a very similar rate of return, average rate of return, around 10.5% year on year inside the ASX, I think 100 or whatever it is. So,
and
Andrew,
I'm just a simpleton. Can I just circle back on one question, which is really, really important? Do you speak about your kids' investment funds to them? Do they know that they're getting this?
So right now, that's the biggest debate. They don't know about it yet. They're a little too young to understand, I think. But But right now, the big debate is: are we going to tell them about this or not? So my first initial thought is likely not until, and I'll kind of figure that out as they hit the teenage years and stuff as well. But as of right now, I may not tell them about it. I might just will it to them and do it that way, because a lot of people, I know when I was 18, if I got $86,000, I would probably spend it on something stupid and get rid of it. It would be gone. So the likelihood of me utilizing that, it just depends on the kids and how they kind of grow up within their teenage years. I want to kind of see how they act, but I'm most likely not going to tell them either until later in life, or I'll just will it to them and it'll be a big surprise. It's one of those two options there.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because I'm having that debate too. So I was always like, okay, Evie, so who's my daughter? Because hers would be projected to sit around about that 100K mark by that point in time. Not including, my wife's Malaysian, so we get the Chinese red packets and stuff. So not including the money that the grandparents throw at her. But I was like, what do you do? Like, do you tell her it's held in a trust? Can you still have a level of control? Because, it's the obvious is you don't want to give it and then them go to Vegas for a weekend and put it all on red,
And double your money.
Can see a lot of people,
never know.
Exactly. And you can see a lot of people will push back when I talk about this. A lot of people will push back and say, well, you're spoiling your child, you're ruining their work ethic and all that stuff. And it depends on the child, and I think that could be true for some kids, and it may not be. But the biggest thing to understand is you don't have to tell them about this. And if that's the case where you don't want them to know that they actually have this, then they don't have to have this. But you can make their life later on so much easier, especially when they're deep into adulthood and that kind of stuff as well. And so that's kind of where you can put this into play. And a lot of people later on in life would very much appreciate just having that available to them. So.
Yeah, I think that whole debate of like ruining their work ethic. It's like, if you have money, your work ethic is just different, just because you're in a different universe, right? Like, Kylie Jenner, like, we would never be able to just use our following to make $1 billion company in the space of 12 months, right? With like a cosmetic line, because number one, it doesn't even cross my brain. Like, I can't even comprehend doing that with a social following. Number one, because I don't have the social following, but number two, I haven't been in the circles where that is even possible. Right? So if you have money, typically you swim in different circles, and because you swim in different circles, you're open to different opportunities. And I think, you don't have to work 9 to 5 to have a good work ethic. You could work 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, and still have a fantastic work ethic. It's just your perspective on life and what you can do with the time in which you have. Now, Andrew, there's two questions we always like to ask before we close the podcast, and we're looking at the time. We're so valuable and appreciative of your time here, because you've just shared so many gems and so much wisdom here.
We've both got babies in the background now. We can hear them going off.
Yeah. So I know Brendo kicks the first one off. So Brendo, do you want to kick it away?
My one's easy because you already led into it. So Ken and I've grown up in the fitness industry. It's where Ken and I first met. And so my question is, obviously we know about the dad bod that every dad achieves once having their first child. So how do you avoid the dad bod? What's your way for that you stay fit and active, or what's the way that you stay healthy and fit?
So I've been lifting weights is the quick answer. I've been lifting weights for about 12 years. I started when I was even longer now. I started when I was 18, so it's been about 16 years. Jeez, I should be bigger than I am.
Yeah.
So I started, and I've been consistently doing it over that time. Like the biggest thing for me was obviously building out the home gym. I think I've spent about $7,000 in the home gym, and I have a squat rack in there, a full set of dumbbells. I have a cable machine. And it's set up pretty much for everything that I would want to utilize it for. And then, in addition, I have like a spin bike in there. I might do I can go back and forth on the treadmill and stuff like that because I can walk outside. But that's how I do it. So every single morning, that's the first thing I do. And then, if I'm really feeling down when I have to work at nighttime as well, I'll go in there again. And that's the beautiful thing about having it at home is I'll go in there again just to get that energy boost. And the reason why I do it, there's two reasons. One of which is I want to stay fit. But in addition, the second reason is the mental benefits that you get out of working out. So it's one of the most important things that you can do as a dad, just because it puts you in a better mood. It helps you sleep better. It helps you perform better in all areas of life. So it's one of the most powerful things that you can do. And I am such a huge advocate of making sure you get your workouts in every single week.
100%.
I love it. So good.
Brendo and I, we're both lifters. We love pumping the iron. I know everybody buys a spin bike and a treadmill with such good intentions. I'll use it definitely, and then it's like, but the option's there to lift weights. So let's lift some weights because we can always go for a walk in the sun later, and especially obviously in Florida. I know it's a little bit humid, but it's always beautiful weather. So
Exactly.
The final question that we like to ask, right, is a little bit of a tricky one. It puts people on their toes, but this is one question. Hopefully. You have to think about. So what is one question no one has ever asked you around either being a dad, generating wealth, running a business, balancing time, or whatever that you secretly wish someone had asked you?
That's a good question. One of the biggest things that nobody really ever asks is there's a couple I'm thinking of, so I'm trying to pick one that I like the best. But one of the things that I think that is a huge major factor is just some of the things to consider, which some of them we've covered in this podcast already, but some of the things to consider as a new dad. And one of the biggest things, like I said, is it's not all about you. It's all about the person who you're trying to provide for and all of that stuff as well. But the thing about it is one of the most incredible journeys. And you talk to a lot of people if you talk to a lot of people at the end of their life, the biggest thing they said that they regret is they didn't spend enough time with their family. And the biggest thing about that is, and that's why I do what I do, is because financial independence and teaching personal finance is the way to be able to spend more time with your family. It's about the time and utilizing your time. It's not about the money. It's not about buying the fancy stuff. It's about the time that you get back, which is the most precious resource that you have out there. And that's what I want. That's the message I want everybody to understand. And that's the biggest thing that we want to teach people is getting your time back so you can spend it with your family and have that valuable time with your family is the most powerful thing that you can do. And the more time you spend with them, it's going to be the most precious moments that you have. You're never going to remember the extra hours that you spent at the office to make an extra few $1,000s. What you're going to remember is the time that you spent with your family, and that is the most important factor. So pursuing this financial independence and trying to get as many dollars as possible working for you is what can help you get there as fast as possible.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that, man.
Absolutely.
So good. Andrew, thank you for being on. It's been an awesome wealth of knowledge this morning. For people to follow you on TikTok, where you are absolutely popping at the moment, and on Instagram as well, where's the best way that they can reach out?
So they can reach out on Instagram or TikTok. I'm at MasterMoneyCO. We are launching a new website, mastermoney.co, in a couple of weeks. And then in addition, we're going to have a bunch of courses and coaching and all that kind of stuff on there as well. But you can reach out anywhere. And then our podcast is the Personal Finance Podcast. So that is where every single week, twice a week, we talk about this exact stuff, financial independence, how to grow your wealth, and how to build wealth over time.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
Bro, thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it. And guys, make sure you check out Andrew's stuff because it is absolutely game-changing, and definitely buy one of his courses too. Support him out, help him out for coming onto our show and really and supporting us, becoming great dads and generating more wealth for our families moving forward. I know I'm going to jump in there and buy one of your courses, mate, because without the support and knowledge of finance, what the fuck am I doing, right? So I love that, man. Thank you so much for your time, brother. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I had so much fun. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
See you next time. That's it from us on this episode on the Dad Bub Show. If you want to find out a little bit more about us, head on over to www.dadbub.com. Until next time, see you next week.